Welcome back to the second stage. We're here for a session on managing data to embrace an AI-first mindset for enterprises. My esteemed guests for this exciting session are Jain, immediately to my right. He's Nexus Cognitive CEO. And to his right is Mahesh Kumar, who's the Acceldata CMO. Let's start off talking about Nexus Cognitive, Anu.
Absolutely.
It's Insight Partners' first services automation business in its portfolio. It modernizes data and AI infrastructure, allowing outcomes within days or weeks, providing speed to value by simplifying what you described to me when we talked last week, simplifying the ball of yarn of integrations. Tell us a bit more about Nexus Cognitive, Anu.
Well, first of all, you're a great spokesperson, so you're hired. No, so look, at the end of the day, we are a composable and agnostic data architecture and ecosystem that integrates and automates the workflows that really help us drive data-driven outcomes, or really AI-powered outcomes at really speed, value, and scale. And so how do we do that? We do that through our Nexus One control plane and our managed service offerings. So really helps us get to real flexible options where our clients' needs are at.
Nice. And so when you describe services automation, you're taking services that would traditionally, some kind of process. We were earlier in Andrew Ng's talk, I don't know if you saw his keynote, he was talking about how AI doesn't displace jobs, it displaces tasks. And so if you're looking for opportunities to streamline your operations in some role, look at the different tasks that make up that role and try to identify which will be most easy to automate. And so that's what you're automating individual services that a human might have historically done.
That's correct. All the hard work of integrating all the pieces of the infrastructure, all the way through the data, the integration, all the way through the outcome.
Nice. All right. So let's move on now to get an introduction to Acceldata from Mahesh. So tech-like, literally, Acceldata is used within the Nexus platform. And so there's kind of a bit of a bridge there. But Acceldata also stands alone as a data observability platform for enterprises. Tell us a bit more about Acceldata and the role of data observability in AI success, such as proactively preventing model drift, for example.
Sure. Pleasure to be here with both of you. If you look at today's discussion, a lot of it was about the applications and the importance of building good AI applications. What powers that? It's the data, right? And Acceldata, what it does is we allow you to provide very trusted, high-quality data to all your AI models, whether it's structured data or unstructured data. We kind of manage both of them. Let me illustrate with an example. One of our customers, they are a data provider, provide business data to others, and they get data from over 130 different countries, over 100 data points. All of that has to come together, goes through about 30, 40 different transformation and steps. Eventually, it's consumed by hundreds of thousands, millions of other businesses, even government entities. So the ability for them to provide that trusted data, including the AI models that give business risk, financial risk, and other kinds of information about their business, becomes super critical. Before Acceldata, if they had a problem, it would take them weeks to find out where the root cause was. With us, it takes them hours.
Right.
So you can imagine how their business kind of completely transformed with us. Mm-hmm. So we observe the quality of data and various other characteristics of the data throughout the pipeline, from the landing zone to the consumption point, and allow you to then manage that in a very proactive manner so you provide trust to all your AI initiatives.
Nice. Makes a huge amount of sense. And it also makes a lot of sense why that data observability piece would be such a key component in something like the Nexus Cognitive solution. So you talked to me last week, Anu, about how Nexus has this modularity, how it has a building block approach where you can say, okay, a solution like Acceldata, other modules in the platform, it's more like, by working with Nexus Cognitive, it's like buying a car as opposed to buying individual car parts and trying to integrate all those together yourself. Tell us a bit more about that modularity, Lego building block.
Yeah, absolutely. So we use the word, we're a composable data architecture. So
what does that mean, composable?
Fantastic question. So we're basically building the entire data mesh through Lego blocks. And so that's any of the open source tools or even some of the closed source guys that are out there. But we ride on the rails of open standards to put those pieces together and integrate it as one outcome. So back to the question around car parts versus buying the car as a whole. So we have clients on both ends of the spectrum. We have those today who are managing massive technical debt. They have old infrastructures, and they like parts of it, and they want to upgrade and modernize parts of it. For those folks, we'll come in and really provide the newer car parts, if you will, but then have that integrated fully end-to-end with the observability plane. Other clients, and this is where we're seeing huge advantages, we have net new workloads. We want to drive AI outcomes at scale, at speed. We don't want to wait 6 months to get infrastructure up. We don't want to wait 9 months to hire and build a team to get to a real outcome. So here, it's the car comes to you. All the parts are built. It's stood up in days, and you're getting outcome in weeks.
Very cool. I love that approach. Mahesh, over to you with a question about small data errors. So even with a data observability platform like Acceldata, obviously you're monitoring for data issues. Something that might not be immediately obvious to everyone is that even very small data errors can impact AI models that those data feed into. So how can enterprises adopt strategies to prevent these errors from snowballing into big business problems?
Sure. I think there are two aspects to AI models. One is the building of the model itself, and the other is running the predictions, right? In both those cases, you need really good high-quality data feeding into the models. For example, if your data is skewed, you don't have data from one particular source, so obviously there is a change in the model and how it can predict it. So let me give you one more example, right? Like one of the largest banks in the world essentially uses AI to predict sort of cash loan offers, credit card offers, and such. And in their instance, one of the things that they found out was the pipeline that's feeding credit scores was not getting updated properly. So now you can imagine when you're trying to predict, should I give this person the loan or not? And the credit scores aren't, up to date, you got a huge impact. You're talking about many tens of millions of dollars over the year.
Yeah.
And some of these problems can go undetected because there is just, if you could think about hundreds and thousands of pipelines, so many different data sources, data feeding from so many different places.
The data might look right in a circumstance like that.
Exactly.
You're getting the credit score in the right format, and so nothing breaks.
Yes.
Or nothing noticeably breaks.
Yes. So that's where I think the observability kind of plays a big role, because we're able to catch each of these issues at the source, shift left in terms of detecting the problem and fixing it, so you understand it very early, and then you're able to kind of prevent it from snowballing in. The other thing I want to pull on is a little bit, we had a discussion around agentic workflows and such. So if you can imagine, a series of agents performing a larger task, any error in each of these due to bad data, so many other reasons, but primarily the input data is not very good. You can imagine, the compounding effect, bad decision versus bad decision versus bad decision. Pretty soon, in 4 or 5 agents down the road, you're so far divergent, right, from where your ideal scenario is going to be, that in the AI era, with more AI agents being built for a lot of different tasks, it becomes that much more critical for you to have a handle on data and be able to provide very trusted data to build your models, and also trusted data to make the predictions. Your customer 360 database has to be perfect, or as close to perfect as possible, because that kind of feeds into the model, and then you get a prediction on the other end. So it's an ongoing process, and that's why you need something like an observability tool to actually manage, all of this. We operate both on-premise data and cloud data. We are agnostic to all the data platforms, Snowflake, Databricks, AWS, Azure, Google, name the hyperscaler or even smaller data platforms, we work with them. So the ability for you to kind of span multiple platforms and also have different on-prem and cloud observability becomes very critical, and that's where we excel.
That leads perfectly into my next question, Anu, which is the importance of infrastructure agnosticism. Could could you give us some of your thoughts on avoiding getting locked in to a particular cloud vendor or superscaler? Why does that matter?
Yeah, no, great question and great example. That was, as you were speaking just now, I was reminded of what Andrew was talking about just maybe an hour or so ago around, data gravity has been really real for a lot of our clients to date, but that's reducing. And what we're seeing is the real cost is not data storage, it's really data compute. And so we talk about locked-in vendors. And so what we do at Nexus is we're removing that the ability of being locked in. We're removing compute from storage. So we're able to now to say, hey, you're on Databricks today, you're on Snowflake tomorrow, you're on an open source compute layer. It's the ability to decouple all of those pieces of the engine and really get to outcome. And so that's our view is it's a world of it's open compute, it's an open world, open standards, and you should be able to take your compute to where you want to.
Nicely said. Anything else you'd like to add on to that, Mahesh?
No, I think the world is moving, obviously, as you said, much more to an open environment. I think the cost of these models and compute is also changing quite rapidly. Enterprises more now than ever want this sort of optionality of multiple different vendors as opposed to getting locked into one. So portability of your infrastructure and your ability to analyze data and choose which is the right place to put that becomes very important. And I think I totally understand what you're talking about.
Nicely said. All right, next topic for both of you gentlemen is data governance. So this is something we promised would be covered in this session. I don't even really, I've been working in data science for like my whole life. Like I did a PhD in neuroscience. I've been working commercially in data science. For over a decade, I still don't really understand what data governance is. Does either of you want to explain that to me?
I'll take a crack at it. I think probably the reason why you don't understand to some extent is it's always been up until now a very ivory tower type of a situation where there's a committee that kind of decides how data can and should be used within the enterprise, obviously for good reason, because you want good standards, good controls, security, privacy, all of those rules and regulation laws in many cases they have to be adhered to. And then that sort of gets percolated down to the data organizations, and they kind of use those things in day to day. What's happening from an Acceldata standpoint, what we are saying is like going forward, governance is not going to be a centralized part of the whole equation. Governance has to sort of metaphorically move with the data. You have to govern the data wherever it is rather than in a very centralized manner. And I think Ali today pointed out about like three things, like people, process, and product, where how increasingly the people or even organizations or departments are taking charge of AI initiatives now with the ability to produce code and things of that nature. Now, in that scenario, if you think about building of these data products gets decentralized, right? Now, you cannot have governance centralized trying to manage this thing that is so distributed. So you have to have an architecture where the data management platform essentially understands the state of data wherever it is for whatever purpose it is being used, and then it's able to apply the right rules and policies to make sure that whoever is using the data is using it in a way that's appropriate, both from a corporation standpoint and also from a legal standpoint, right, an ethical standpoint. So I think data governance is due for a huge shakeup in the near future, where people are not going to be like looking at it from a committee ivory tower. Of course, there will be inputs there, but a lot of the action is really going to be very close to the data and where it's being used.
Just to add to that, I think when we talk to our clients, data governance, I'd like to say everyone talks about it, but no one's really doing it today. And what we find is they've had so much technical debt, so many different tools that it's literally impossible for them to think about how do I follow my data from source to digital twin to mesh, warehouse, applications, whatever it may be. And what we're finding is as we've adopted a composable architecture with open standards using observability, we're able to start to automate a lot of those governance features. So that heavy, process-intensive, people-intensive part of this governance world is coming out, and getting that meta information visible is creating a ton of value.
Agree.
Nice. Great answers. With data volume growing and regulatory concerns also mounting, Mahesh, maybe I know that you have some thoughts on how enterprises should approach data governance with an AI-first mindset given these climate changes.
Yeah, I think there is governance for AI, and then other part of it is really using AI for governance, right? Today, you can use AI to understand a lot of information about the data itself, and then make decisions on what kinds of governance policies have to be adopted. Give you an example. If you have a table of, you can understand with AI that it's financial information. And if you have a certain column that's about revenue, now it gives you a little bit more insights, right? So you can actually use this information to then generate descriptions about what's happening in the data. With that description, now you can then start understanding with regulatory frameworks, BCBS 239, whatever that is, you can then understand, okay, given this data set and these regulations, what are the right rules and policies that I need to apply on it? So you're literally using AI to understand your data, and then using AI to kind of understand the controls that need to be applied, and then using that AI again to apply the right rules and controls on the data and manage it. So this, this concept of AI for governance is going to be more and more prevalent going forward, and that's what's going to allow us to kind of decentralize and put governance much closer to wherever the data is, because a lot of the processing and understanding of that information happens right at the data layer.
So to summarize there's a shift that you see happening from governance for AI to AI doing governance.
This is governance, yeah.
That's cool. All right, this is for, or do you inhaled deeply?
No, go ahead.
I have a question for both of you on scalability. This is a key challenge in AI implementation. How can container orchestration platforms like Kubernetes streamline data workflows and enable scalable AI architectures? Maybe we'll start with you, Anil.
Yeah, so look, we think containerization is one of those panaceas. It's reducing a significant amount of complexity that we're seeing out there. For many of our clients, Kubernetes containerization has had the ability to take out cloud costs. We just had a client, actually funny enough, a banking client running credit data. They went from over $800,000 of cloud cost to about $40,000 of cloud cost with containerization, really the ability to move compute from storage. So we're super excited and continue to embed across all parts of a architecture containerization.
Mm-hmm. And in our case, I'd say containerization and Spark, those technologies kind of go together. In any data operations, there is inherent sort of spikes, right? Like you have data coming in over the weekend, and then reports have to be built and ready on a Monday morning before the employees come in who start, who want to start using it. So always there is a lot of seasonality to it, and there are spikes in amount of data. So, the ability for the infrastructure to actually scale dynamically with these spikes of data becomes very, very critical. And the ability for them to continue to add new ways of checking the information and adding more, I would say, checks, detecting anomalies, things of that nature. As you keep layering on, the compute resources and others becoming, more and more significant. And that's where the combination of these two technologies really help you sort of fuel your initiatives in a very, agile and on-demand manner. At the same time, reducing the cost, because you don't have to maintain that huge infrastructure all the time, and you can scale up and down as the needs are evolve for you. So that's why this technology is a very fundamental part of how Acceldata is architected, and we are serve clients with terabytes of data being processed on a daily basis, running thousands and thousands of checks over millions of rows of data and such. All of that's really possible because of these core technologies that allow us to scale as the needs might arise.
Nicely said. You guys have both had great answers to all the questions that I had prepared. We're going to open up now to the audience. We've had some questions come through, but also if you're out there in the audience and you have any additional questions you'd like us to consider, please send those our way now. We still have some time here to get through some. So my first question here is, what are the first steps an enterprise should take to start building data infrastructure suited for AI? And actually, this follows on nicely from a question that popped up in my head as we were talking about data governance, because I was thinking about, okay, if now is the time that companies need to start thinking about data governance, concretely, what does that involve? And so, maybe data governance can be part of your answer, but more generally, what are the steps an enterprise should take to start building a data infrastructure suited for AI? Anu, why don't you go?
Yeah, that's a great question. Super excited by it, actually. I'd start with the first part, which is don't build data infrastructure to build data infrastructure. I think we've come out of a world where we've seen so many folks build what we call the intergalactic data warehouse. They have anarchy of spread marts out there, data mart anarchy. And so the first part of this, it's how do we get rid of that? So because we know that compute is expensive over storage, data can reside where it's at. The key to first is really finding out what are the use cases that are going to drive true outcome in the business. So our point of view, it's we're going to help you find those data catalogs, that information, orchestrate that information to get to those AI outcomes. And then when and where it makes sense, that will then get integrated into a data mesh.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Picking up on that, I'd say from our standpoint, understanding sort of the usage of your data, like what are your critical business assets, becomes really important. What are the assets that are like feeding your AI models? Of them, what are the key features or columns that are like the most important, and sort of starting with a focus on those and making sure they are like, because everything has a cost, right? Even managing and monitoring quality, everything has a cost. And so you have to be very intentional in how you manage it. So our best practice really is to kind of start with your most business critical assets, most critical piece of data, get them in order, and then you kind of slowly fan out to the other aspects of it. The other thing, and just one point I want to clarify, which you mentioned earlier, it's AI for governance. I didn't mean to say that governance for AI is not important. It's absolutely important. I was just trying to make a point that with AI, you can now use it to do better governance, so that your governance of AI initiatives is really good, right?
Well, I took
because
it all
so
as
important.
a positive.
Just to make sure on that.
Excellent. All right. So I've just been listening to your answers. I haven't been reading the audience questions here. So let's go to the one on the top there. How do you think about maintaining high data quality and managing your internal and external data at your company? So this one it's a bit vague to me. I don't know. Is there something in there that really?
I'll take a shot. I'm sure Mahesh will jump right in on this. Look, I think this one actually screams observability, right off the bat, right? This is really, it's not about having point-to-point system connections anymore, but it's how do we look at your entire data flow from source to your warehouse or to some integration point all the way to application, and being able to see all the machinations that go through. So that's lineage, that's governance, but it's also observability. And if and when there are issues, quickly find it and resolve it. For Nexus, when we find it and we resolve it, it goes back into our automation plane. And that's what the power of observability does around this. But Mahesh, I'm really excited to hear your...
Well, I couldn't have said it better, so thank you for articulating that. I think observability certainly is a very important part of it. Also, there is a culture, within the organization. The data engineering team has to get closer to the business, and you have to facilitate that dialogue between the business and the data engineers, so that a lot of the business requirements are actually factored into what the data engineers are doing. Again, using AI and other techniques to actually allow those business rules and policies to be articulated in spoken language and then translated back into how you're going to monitor and manage that. Those are some other things that are also very important. Just really looking beyond just the data operations and data engineering side of the house to also the business and how we are going to work with them is also becoming very important when you think of maintaining quality and trusted data in your environment.
Very nice. Here is a straightforward one that could get some great answers. What's the best way to drive maximum value out of your data?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. At the end of the day, data is an asset. I think the best view I saw of this, it was maybe 6, 7 years ago. Walmart had in their annual report, here's the value of our data in the organization, and taking that mindset, it's an asset. It's just not exhaust. If we start there, so many other applications, use cases comes out of it. This is not wasted exhaust. There's real value to this information.
Absolutely. And I would say, just add that, like, if you're thinking about data, the best way would be to pick initiatives that are very close to revenue, right? Like, very simple use case. If you're reconciling data between two financial systems, this is some capability that we have. You're able to reconcile it to make sure that the payments are actually being made properly or they're not being made improperly. You're collecting the right amount of monies from others. So I would say, like, if you think about getting value out of data and you want to prove something, choose those initiatives that are like closest to revenue, have a more direct line to that, and then you kind of fan out a little bit more into other initiatives, eventually into some employee productivity and things of that nature, which is where a lot of the AI initiatives come in. So that would be one way to probably look at how to get good value out of your data.
Yeah, crystal clear. Another question that could maybe have some concrete examples like your last answer just did is, Mahesh, we talked earlier about how small data errors can lead to costly AI outcomes downstream. Do you have specific examples, either of you, I suppose,
Yeah.
of how these small data errors can be proactively managed?
Sure. Let me give you one very simple example. We have a customer that's a very well-known consumer packaged goods provider. You'll find it in literally any store you go to, small or large. And they collect, information, supply chain, and sort of, amount of product that's actually been consumed off the shelf every day, coming in from many different countries, and then it gets processed and so on. Now, the smallest error that can happen there is you keep getting data from one particular source, but today, instead of 5,000 rows of data that you normally get, you only got 1,000, right? That's an anomaly. You can't write a rule, to kind of detect it. That's where AI comes in. So AI kind of understands the patterns of your data. It's like, hey, every Friday from this source, I get this much amount of data. This Friday, I got a fifth of what I'm supposed to get, right? So very small thing. Did the data arrive? Yes. It goes through the pipeline, but it's not complete. So how do you detect those synergies? So that's an example of a small error that gets fed into the model, and then eventually your prediction on what you have to sell, and things of that nature go awry. So you have shelf out of stock and all those kinds of errors because your supply chain, didn't work properly because incoming data in terms of demand and what got actually consumed by the customers didn't come through properly, and you never detected it. It's a very simple example, but very powerful because it directly hits the revenue, for that company right away.
Another example of data observability being important.
Yeah, I'll add, we have a client today where we help create the small business credit file. So we're pulling data from the top 150 FIs in the US, and we pull all that information. Any small mistake in that data from any of the FIs that come in will create data drift. Data drift will create issues in the credit risk model. And it's not just credit risk, it goes on to fraud, it goes on to all sorts of other outcomes. So very, very small errors can have massive impact, both financially and to the financial system as a whole.
Great examples. Last question for you both, and this is a wonderful one to end on here. It's actually, yes, there it is. What are some rewards you've discovered in your own company? So we've been talking in this session about an AI-first mindset for enterprises. In your own company, Anu, let's start with you. How has Nexus Cognitive reaped rewards of this AI-first mindset?
We've been a data-driven company from the beginning. So for us, it's not only what we do not only what we do internally, but it's everything from managing company culture, our own information off our operations. So for us, for me, I'll just make it very simple. I'm able to sleep at night. Data-driven decisions really drives a level of confidence in what we do.
Nice.
So for us, we use it in marketing. We use it even in our product to be able to understand and ask questions. Our sales team uses to get very accurate technical information. Can this be done in the product or not? So a lot of the product information. So as a company, we use AI to actually improve our business outcomes across a lot of different functions. We are just a 300-person company right now, but we still find a lot of use for AI within our company.
Excellent. Thank you so much, both of you. Anu Jain, Nexus Cognitive CEO, Mahesh Kumar, Acceldata CMO. Thank you so much for this great session on managing data to embrace an AI-first mindset for enterprises. And yeah, hopefully we'll catch up with you both again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun.